Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Kalanati. Today I return with another batch of 5 books as I attempt to wrap up the many things I read in January. This is the one where I'm going to talk about poetry, which feels very weird because I don't know anything about poetry and I don't know how to review poetry either. So you may recall that a little while ago I read So Far So Good by Ursula K. Le Guin, which is her last poetry collection. That was the first time that I ever really read a bunch of Le Guin's poetry, and I really enjoyed it. And since I have had bad luck finding the type of poetry that I enjoy, I got very excited because I liked it. So I went out and I got some more poetry collections because I guess I am finally doing the thing where I read a bunch of poetry to see what sticks. So next I went out and I got Mary Oliver. Mainly because her name has come up a lot as I've been reading about poetry, and what I'd heard about her poetry made it sound like it had similarities with Le Guin's, which was a big plus. So I got Felicity. I actually checked this out of the library the day before Mary Oliver died, so the next day I thought to myself, either this is great timing or terrible timing. The good thing is that I really liked this. Felicity, I think, is a 2014 poetry collection, so one of Oliver's last, if not her last one. I really enjoyed the first half of it. I would say overall, all of the poems in this were ones that I enjoyed for the style and the form. There was a voice there that I really liked. So the first half of this collection is about nature, about Oliver's reflections on things, and I really enjoyed that. I was so into the first half of this collection. The second half, though, are love poems, and apparently I'm not into love poetry, so they were good. They were, just the form of them seemed nice, but I wasn't into the theme, basically. So I am definitely going to read more by Mary Oliver. I have requests in for American Primitive, which is one of her earliest collections. I think it's the one she got a Pulitzer Prize for, and then another one of her more recent collections, which has a name I can never remember. It's very unmemorable, but yeah, I'm excited about reading more by Mary Oliver. Then, while I happened to be in the library looking for Mary Oliver collections, I was standing in the 800s, right smack dab in front of a bunch of Billy Collins poetry collections, and I said to myself, might as well read something by him because he is such a famous, still living American poet. Billy Collins has also been Poet Laureate of the United States. He's just like one of those few poets who might actually be a household name these days. So I got The Rain in Portugal, which is a 2016 poetry collection, and this was actually very underwhelming. I went in with very few expectations. I'd always had this idea that Collins's poetry is relatively friendly and banal and very accessible, very readable for the general audience, and that's pretty much what I got. This was friendly, banal, and seems like an extremely mediocre collection by Collins. It was very easy to read. I read it practically in one sitting. There was nothing in it that made me want to pause and reflect or reread either, which surprised me. I did go and look up some reviews, and it seemed very split between people who were like 5 stars, everything that Billy Collins does is pure gold, and then, man, I like Billy Collins, but this is not his best ever. He was kind of phoning this in. So I'm a bit split. I don't think that Billy Collins' stuff is necessarily for me. I think it's not my thing. Like I said, I don't know how to review poetry, and I'm really just trying to figure out what works for me. Mary Oliver is good, Billy Collins is not so much, and my next attempt will be with Rilke, trying to get my hands on some of the right translations that people have been recommending to me. So I will be talking about more poetry in the near future as well. As I mentioned a little while ago in a Friday Reads video, I have also returned to my reread of the Chrestomanci series by Diana Wynne Jones. I have a huge, overwhelming fondness for Diana Wynne Jones's books. She wrote so many things, and I've read almost everything, most of it when I was a child. She's one of the most influential authors in my childhood, and I've reread some of her books but never really tackled a big reread, and Chrestomanci is the series that she's probably most famous for. So I've always wanted to reread the Chrestomanci books in an actual order, since I read them so haphazardly the first time round, I missed so many of the connections. So I'm now rereading them all in internal chronological order, which is not the same as the publication order and not the same as Jones's recommended reading order. So the first book is The Lives of Christopher Chant, and I actually reread that last year. And in that one, Christopher Chant, aka the future Chrestomanci, a very powerful enchanter with 9 lives, is a small child who discovers that he has 9 lives, so he's been burning through them very fast, and that he also has magical abilities, and he's being used by bad adults to do illegal things. Christopher Chant is taken in by the current Chrestomanci, Gabriel DeWitt, I think is his name, and trained to be his replacement. And then we move on to Conrad's Fate. The main character of this one is a boy named Conrad in another one of the worlds, like a parallel world to the one that Christopher Chant is from. Conrad has been told pretty much his whole life that he has a terrible fate, that he did something or failed to do something important in a previous life, and that he will meet a bad, nasty early end in his present life if he doesn't fix that thing. His uncle, who's a bit of a shady character, tells him that he has to kill somebody up at this big castle where magical things are happening in order to, continue living. So Conrad is sent to this castle to get a job in the staff there, where he meets a strange boy named Christopher Chant, who is now a teenager rather than a small boy. Christopher is also there with a secret agenda. He is searching for somebody, and he and Conrad become friends, and Christopher is the one to tell him, you don't actually have a terrible fate. I have no idea what you're talking about, but maybe somebody is using you too. One of the major things that happens in this book is that somebody is like pulling the probabilities, changing the possibilities of the world in order to affect their financial affairs. So like you sit down to eat breakfast and you think you're gonna eat pancakes, and then the world just gets pulled sideways and suddenly, I don't know, you're eating biscuits instead. Most people don't notice these changes, but Christopher and Conrad feel them very badly and are wondering what is going on in this big mansion. It was really good. I had vague memories of reading this the first time. It's one of the later books published. I think it was from 2000, so I probably read it around the time that it came out. And the first time around, I never made the connection that the Christopher from here is the Christopher from the previous book, and that he's, the Chrestomanci of most of the other books. I don't know how I missed that, but I enjoyed this so much more rereading it. I noticed so many more details, and I was much more into the story. It was just really good, and I really liked Conrad and seeing Christopher as a teenager. He's not perfect. I mean, really early on that though he's going to be a very powerful and good figure in this world, he has his flaws. After that is Charmed Life. I think this is the first Chrestomanci book that was ever published in 1977. This follows Cat Chant and his older sister Gwendolyn Chant, who is supposedly a very powerful witch. They are orphaned when their parents are killed in a boating accident, and Cat believes that he survived because he was clinging to his sister, who as a witch cannot be drowned. And Gwendolyn is horrid. This is the thing I remembered most vividly about the book, is that Kat's older sister is just a horrible little monster. She has been told her whole life that she is going to be a powerful witch. She gets all the education, nobody reins her in, and she is just climbing that ladder to success, but in a really bad way and affected by a lot of, well, essentially criminals. So eventually Cat and Gwendolyn are taken in by Chrestomanci, Christopher Chant and his wife, to live at Chrestomanci Castle. And then Gwendolyn hates living at Chrestomanci Castle. She hates Chrestomanci and all the rules that are suddenly imposed on her. The children are not allowed to practice sorcery or witchcraft in the castle unless they are having their lessons, and Gwendolyn is used to just doing whatever the heck she wants to. And Cat just gets dragged along with all of his sister's bad deeds and plots and stuff. I was surprised this time around how disappointed I was in Cat. He just feels so limp. He's being used by everybody, and sometimes you get this feeling that he knows that, but he's more willing to just go along with the flow in his comfort zone than to try to fight back or take a stand. And this is kind of understandable because his only relative, the only family that he has and that he knows well, is his sister. But she does not deserve his devotion or loyalty at all. She's not really looking out for him. She's also using him. It's a really infuriating situation, and probably exacerbated by the fact that I think that the adults in the story who are actually aware of a lot that's happening don't really take steps to help Cat right away or tell him what's going on and get him out of that situation. They just sit back and let things play out, when I really thought that they should have been a bit more proactive about shutting down some of this stuff. So really not my favorite Chrestomanci book, but I know I really enjoyed it as a kid. It's not a bad story, just I didn't like the characters as much as I remembered. That is it for my reread of the Chrestomanci books so far. I'll probably get through the remainder of the series in February, and I'm really looking forward to it. And the last thing that I want to mention quickly here in this batch is Elleander Morning by Jerry Yulsman. I'm going to do a separate review of this. I got very excited and worked up in a good way while I was reading it, so I think I have enough things to say about it that I'll do a separate review. This surprised me so much because it defied my very mediocre expectations of another one of those books that has time travel and people trying to kill Hitler in order to avoid World War II. Actually, it was so much more than that and took a very different approach to it. It was much more science fictional, like a science fictional what if scenario with an alternate timeline, rather than being so focused on the more fantastical time travel bit. And I really, really enjoyed it. So more coming on this one soon. And that is it for this batch of books. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you want to. I'll be back to talk to you again with the next batch of 5 books very soon. And until then, bye.